Hey, what's up, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions this week as OTAs start to begin, as the Browns season starts to show small little inklings of starting to be what we remember and recognize as football. It's an exciting time. I mean, I think they just announced that at least the Browns, and I think this goes for even the Bengals, are going to be able to have full capacity stadiums for the football season. Things are moving in the right direction. We're getting very, very close to things that we have been dying to come back and just to see in general. So I'm overall excited. It's going to be a long summer, but enjoy it. I don't know why I went off on that little rant to start this video, but I think it's going to make some people's days better, right? Sometimes you got to start off the day with some good news, with some good vibes. So the first question comes from Jared Kent, who says, could you explain how the practice squad works? If we like Tommy Togiai or Demetric Felton, but there's not space for them in 2021, can we stash them on the practice squad? Can other teams sign them? Can we bring them up during the season if needed? Never understood how that works. The way the practice squad works, and there's a bunch of different rules for the practice squad when it comes to how people are eligible for it. But essentially what happens when somebody is on the practice squad, and we're going to use Tommy Togiai as an example, is that they get cut first, right? The Browns release them from their contract, and then what happens is that they have to clear through waivers. Now, waivers are a whole complicated process. I'm going to boil it down to the most simple thing so I don't go super long on this question. But what clearing waivers means is that each team individually gets a chance to grab that player before he hits the open market. And I believe it's like similar to the draft order, right? So the Browns would cut Tommy Togiai. All 32 teams would have to say, no, we don't want Tommy Togiai. And if that does happen, if he clears through all 32 teams, which with the guy like Tommy Togiai, fourth round draft pick, not very likely he would clear waivers, then what happens is that you can then sign them to the practice squad. So you cut them, they clear waivers, and then you can sign them to the practice squad. Even if it does clear waivers, you get them on the practice squad. If a team is short a defensive tackle in week 2, then you can just sign him off the Browns practice squad if you're another team, and then now you have Tommy Togiai, a 4th round pick. Also, during the season, if the Browns want to sign Tommy Togiai or anybody on their practice squad to the active roster, they can do that, obviously. It's the same way. But that's how the practice squad works. It's not really being signed to the Cleveland Browns. It's kind of a tentative signing. You're signed as a practice player. So any signing that would say, hey, we want this guy to make our 53-man roster would then trump that signing, if that makes sense. I hope that explanation made sense. Let me know if it did. But that's how the practice squad works. The next question comes from CJ, who says, with Ward, Baker, Teller, and Chubb all due for extensions, if you had to let one walk, who would it be? Well, you're definitely not going to let Baker Mayfield walk, especially if he has as good or a better year this year than he did the year before. And then it's down to Nick Chubb, who we know is always awesome, Wyatt Teller, who's had one really great year, and then Denzel Ward, who's really good when he's on the field but has trouble being on the field. So this then boils down to philosophy. Whatever position you feel like you can replace with more ease is always the position you go with, right? That's just how you have to look at it. Are you going to be able to find somebody who might not be Nick Chubb, but a good enough running back to run your offense? Is that going to be harder than finding a DB, than finding a really good offensive guard? You have to do that calculus, and for every franchise, it's different. Some franchises are really good at finding, different positions versus other franchises. So then that is kind of how that's calculated. If I'm the Cleveland Browns, I would probably have to say that Nick Chubb of those 4 would be the odd person out, and it's not fun to say that. But if Nick Chubb does go, and look, Nick Chubb is a special player, but obviously you would be betting on Baker Mayfield to fill any productivity woes that you don't have because of Nick Chubb and step up in that area. You would feel confident in your ability to draft a running back who can maybe not be, the game-changing guy that Nick Chubb is, but another 1,000-yard rusher to feature Kareem Hunt more. That ultimately would be a easier sell than trying to replace Wyatt Teller if he's still, if he plays at an all-pro level again, or Denzel Ward, who can be one of the best corners in football when he's healthy. And I know the health thing has its own issues, but it's much harder to find a really good elite corner and much more rare to find one of those guys, especially in the draft, especially where the Browns hope to draft. That then puts you at a point to where the easiest position to replace from where the Browns hope to draft is the running back position. And that's probably the route that you have to go if you have to pick one. Now, it might not come down to having to pick one of those four guys. Maybe Ward doesn't want to stay here. You know what I mean? All kind of things to break down. But if you're just giving me that scenario, it's probably what I would go with. The next question comes from Dog Coverage Daily, who says, do you think the Browns can win the Super Bowl even if Baker Mayfield doesn't get better and he stays the same skill level? Baker Mayfield was not the bottleneck on that team last year. I felt like the defense was. And I truly believe how Baker Mayfield played last year. If he had a better defense, I think he could have went to a Super Bowl, and I think there is a world where he could have won a Super Bowl. I think he played more than good enough. There's been much worse quarterback play that has won a Super Bowl than what Baker Mayfield was doing in 2020. So even if he doesn't improve, if he gives you that same level of play, which was very good, a top 10 level of play, yeah, obviously you can win a Super Bowl with him. Next question comes from Tino, who says, do you think not having players during the voluntary OTAs is going to impact our season in a bad way, or is it going to help prevent injuries? It's just not going to matter. I'm pretty indifferent on the OTAs. If they're there, cool. If they're not, I don't care. I don't think it moves the needle either way. That's kind of where I'm at with OTAs. I don't think it's a benefit. I don't think it's a negative. I just think it's just a thing that happens during the offseason. The next question comes from Justin, who says, Q, what are your thoughts on Jimmy Haslam as an owner? Do you think he has evolved along with the organization? Probably not, right? The best thing that can happen for a owner or a franchise is stability at the quarterback position, because that then gives stability throughout the whole organization, right? I don't know how much I believe in great ownership or whatever. I sometimes think that that's really overrated when teams talk about how great their ownership is, specifically teams like New England or Pittsburgh or Baltimore, where always the ownership is just such great. It doesn't really come from, I just don't buy it. So yeah, I don't know if he's evolved, but he's lucked into a situation now that he doesn't have to be that active in, and you can change your entire perception as a NFL owner when you do that, right? Look at the New Orleans Saints owner. He was a laughing stock before they got Drew Brees, and all of a sudden now, you don't really think of the Saints as a terrible franchise. Same dude that owns the team, well, same family at least, that owns the team. Nothing's really changed that much, just Drew Brees and Sean Payton, boom, and all of a sudden 20 years of stability. You're a great organization. That's all it is. The next question comes from Rev, who says, if Greedy doesn't pan out and Barry doesn't cut him, what is his trade value? Probably a 5th round pick. Next question comes from King Cam, who says, do you think that Marvin Wilson could be a superstar down the line? Because I saw an old mock draft of him as a top 10 prospect. Marvin Wilson is a very interesting undrafted free agent. Now, it's going to be very tough for him to make this roster. It's going to be even tougher for him to probably end up on the Browns. I feel like a team is going to want to claim him if the Browns cut him, so he's not going to make the practice squad. So yeah, I do think Marvin Wilson can be a good player. This is a guy who was a former, first round pick in a lot of people's opinions, had a up and down year at Florida State. He's like the defensive tackle version of Grant Delpit, but much less spectacular. So yeah, he could be a good player. I think that, it's worth kicking the tire on. I think it's crazy he didn't even get drafted, but we'll see. Next question comes from Wesley Johnson, who says, hey Q, I know you talk about the Browns cutting D'Ernest, but why shouldn't they keep him as leverage for a Chubb extension or even take Kareem's role if Nick leaves? I like Dearness Johnson, but I don't think Dearness Johnson is good enough to give you leverage over Nick Chubb. And he's probably not a guy who should be your second running back. He's a third running back in the NFL. And they're trying to replace that guy with Demetric Felton. And they might think Demetric could be a number 2 running back. So I think Demetric Felton is really the leverage, if we want to say that, or if we want to phrase it like that, over Nick Chubb more than anything. The next question comes from Eastleigh Bash, who says, I've seen rumors or suggestions that the Browns should sign Steven Nelson from the Steelers. Do you think this would be a good move or unnecessary move? It'd be a meh move. I just don't see where he would play, and I don't think the Browns would do it just because they already have, kind of a surplus at people who could play that other boundary position. You got Greedy and Greg Newsome battling it out there, the 2 young guys, and if they don't work out and you want to put a veteran over there, you could put Troy Hill there. So I just don't see the need at this point. Next question is from Soul Train, who says, if the Browns demolish the Chiefs in week 1, how much hype will the media give the Browns, or will they say it's only week 1 and bring up last year's Bucs losing week 1? Well, there will be multiple, all kinds of different takes if something like that happens, and that's fair, right? There are going to be people who are like, oh, it's only week 1. Let's chill out, which is fair. There are going to be people who are going to worry about the Chiefs and wonder what's going on with the Chiefs because getting blown out technically 2 games in a row, right? The Super Bowl and then week 1 when they came back. They only got blown out that one time against Tampa Bay last year. So if it happens 2 times in a row, it's going to be a big storyline. And it's going to be about the Kansas City Chiefs, especially nationally, because, if the Browns blow out the Chiefs, I think the story is the Kansas City Chiefs and the quick turn they have had in the eyes of a lot of people from being this impenetrable team to a team that can get blown out 2 times in a row, technically speaking, since that would have been the last 2 times we saw the Chiefs. It would be a huge deal. And yeah, there will be some people who use that as an opportunity to say, hey, look, I said the Browns were going to be, the Kansas City Chief killer. And, this is why they're doing that and how they're doing that. And the Browns are going to be so dominant. And then there are going to be people who are just going to talk about the Chiefs. That's fair, ultimately, right? If you do something as shocking as that, and I don't think as much as we love the Browns on this channel, nobody's expecting the Browns go into Arrowhead and just blow out the Kansas City Chiefs. That's just unexpected. It would be a lovely surprise, but I think ultimately it's unexpected. So, yeah, that kind of thing happening, people are going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. That's fair. You know what I mean? Especially nationally, that's fair. And I know Browns fans are going to be mad. We beat the Chiefs and they make it all about the Chiefs and what's wrong with the Chiefs. That's just what it is, right? If the Browns blew them out, let's fast forward, 18, 19 weeks, and let's say the Browns play the Chiefs in the playoffs in 2021 or 2022 technically and blow out the Chiefs there. All of a sudden, yeah, then the talk's going to be about the Browns. But week 1, yeah, if the Browns blow out the Chiefs, people are going to wonder what's wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, as irritating as that line of thought or story might be for y'all, it's ultimately fair. I don't think that's an unfair way to characterize that situation, because if that were literally any other team other than the team that we cheer for, the Cleveland Browns, then we would have the exact same reaction. What's wrong with the Chiefs, right? If it were the Baltimore Ravens, if it were, the Bills or any other team, I know at least for me, I would be like, wow, what's going on with the Chiefs? This literally has never happened with Patrick Mahomes. By the way, you're going to hear terrible takes about Patrick Mahomes, right? Because he's been so good that, if you've had a hot take about Patrick Mahomes, you have had to sit on that because it would just make you seem ridiculous at this point. But the second he looks vulnerable, you're going to hear all kind of crazy, just top tier level dumb takes about Patrick Mahomes. You're going to hear that he can't throw. He's not accurate. If nobody's open, he's not good. You're going to hear all kind of dumb, hot garbage tier takes about Patrick Mahomes if that happened. But yeah, that's probably how that's going to roll out. But don't worry, because if you're subscribed to this channel, You don't got to worry about what the rest of the media is going to do and say and react. Because on this channel right here, we're going to be talking about the Browns and how they did it, what went down, and why the Browns, if they're able to blow out the Kansas City Chiefs and Arrowhead, might win it all. It's going to be all here on this channel. So just subscribe here, click that notification bell, and you ain't got to worry about all that, Soul Train. But again, thank you for the question. And again, guys, thank you all for the questions this week. Have a great day. Have a good night.